And very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. My guest this evening is rather well known, but he's an attorney at law. And attorneys at law don't usually carry boards around and billboards and say, I'm an attorney at law. But this particular attorney at law is rather famous. When I tell you his name, you'll understand why. Hejaaz Hizbullah is my guest this evening. Good evening to you, Hejaaz Hizbullah.
Good evening, Faraz. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show.
But you know, I'm glad you made it.
Yes,
Because,
finally.
Yes, finally, because the last time, ladies and gentlemen, my colleague Charlene Benedict was due to interview Mr. Hizbullah about 3 years ago, and Mr. Hizbullah was arrested that day in the afternoon, and our producer Shian Ranatunga found out while he was at the local supermarket, and only to think that Charlene was pulling his leg.
So I was worried coming to the show.
You were?
How this show?
And did the police allow you to call us?
Yes. No, they didn't. They didn't. I was trying to call and inform the studio saying that I'm not able to come for the show.
Right.
But then they were dragging their feet about giving me a call. But then I realized, I suppose everybody knows that I've been arrested.
Well, yes, so you, instead of making Newsline, you made the news.
News itself, yes.
Indeed. Tell me, the good, the bad, the ugly. You have first-hand knowledge of the PTA, the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And now the public are being given something called an anti-terrorism bill, which the government hopes to make an act. How bad is the PTA? How good is the anti-terrorism as an alternative to the PTA?
The PTA, when you compare it with the ATA, is much better, but it's also bad.
Right.
But it's much better. So I'm making this statement so that the viewers can get a perspective as to how bad it is. So it's more of a case of falling into the fire from the frying pan.
Right.
And nobody supports terrorism, Faraz, and nobody wants to speak for terrorism. Nobody wants to advocate anything that would support these type of violent activities. But what is being projected as terrorism and what is being sold to the public as being a terrorist activity are things that are very, very ordinary in any democratic society.
Right.
And this the anti-terrorism bill targets normal, general, democratic conduct and expression of dissent. Now, if you look at we look at the what happened last year, when people did not have gas, they lined up the gas cylinders on the road, and some instances where they blocked the road. This also happened for fertilizer, where farmers were agitating and they were not allowing vehicles to pass, or all that. Under the ATA, all this type of conduct will be acts of terrorism. And that's the danger. Okay. That's the danger, and that's where this act becomes a very, very and the PTA did not drop down so low.
Okay.
But the ATA is a very broad definition of terrorism, and that is extremely dangerous.
So that's why ordinary people who are not wannabe terrorists or anything like that should be worried.
Exactly.
Because it impinges on your ability to protest and so on.
Exactly. And also there's something more. Under the Prevention of Terrorism Act, you can arrest a person only with the sanction of a superintendent of police.
Right.
So the law does not apply to not every police officer can make an arrest under the PTA. A police officer can do that only with the sanction of the superintendent of police.
Right.
But under the ATA, every police officer has that power.
Absolutely everyone.
Every police officer has that power, and every DIG has the power of issuing detention orders. So if you fall foul of your local politician, the OIC from your station can come and arrest you under the ATA, and he can convince the local politician or the police officer can convince the DIG to issue a DO against you.
Now, but that's absolutely crazy.
And that's the concern. I mean, I mean, these are not these examples that I'm setting out are not unknown.
Right.
In Sri Lanka, we've had so much of abuse of these special and other laws, and that's something that's well documented, and lots of people have spoken about. So we are not strangers to police abusing its lawful powers.
Right.
So
it's absolutely. It's that law itself is terrorizing the public.
Yes.
Because however rational you are, and all these people who came out onto the streets and protested the unfair conditions and mismanagement of the economy and everything else, simply won't be able to do that.
They won't. And even if there are no arrests, the fact that there is a law like this, and that there is a potential for arrests, will certainly intimidate a lot of people from participating in any show of dissent or any show of political expression.
So do we need an anti-terrorism law, or do we have enough laws to handle terrorism?
Interesting question, and that is something that people who have been, so there has been a debate in Sri Lanka about whether repeal the PTA in toto and not to have a counter-terrorism law at all, or repeal and replace. I belong to the repeal and get rid of the law in toto, and I say this for the reason that, firstly, again, I want to highlight that nobody advocates this sort of random acts of violence against civilian populations. Nobody advocates that, and nobody supports that. But if there is a real cognizable threat that we can see, and that we can that we are convinced there's something like this, obtaining consensus won't be a problem. I mean, I don't think there'll be any problem getting consensus for any law to meet a definite threat, a real threat.
But are there any shortcomings in our legal system?
And we already have emergency regulations.
Right.
The president has the power to make emergency regulations. So if there's an immediate, urgent threat, then certainly the president can intervene under the emergency regulation, and thereafter, if there's some necessity, a law can be brought about. Now, if you look at the example of the PTA, PTA was brought in 1979. By 1979, that was 4 years after Alfred Duraiappah was assassinated. Alfred Duraiappah, as we all know, was one of the initial beginnings of the LTT. So LTT and political assassinations and certain acts of criminal activity was already in operation in Sri Lanka for 4 years before we brought the PTA in. And that was for 1 year. So if you look at all these provisions, the question that you have to ask is, which terrorist group are you targeting? Who are you looking at?
And does this go to the trouble, at least, of defining terrorism?
No, it does. It does. It gives a definition of terrorism.
But the PTA doesn't define.
The PTA doesn't define terrorism. Doesn't define an offence called terrorism. PTA just brings in certain offences and ensures that or provides for those offences to be investigated and prosecuted in a certain way, with DOs and 18 months in detention and all of that. ATA defines an offence called terrorism, but in actual fact it's something else. The definition of terrorism in the ATA is far, far, far away from international accepted standards for terrorism, and also far away from the counter-terrorism bill as well, which was there previously. So this is much broader than the counter-terrorism bill.
And when was this drafted, this anti-terrorism bill?
I don't know. I think this has been I'm made aware that this bill was being talked about for about a year now. I think soon after the Aragale, I think that's where it had its origin.
In your view, is our legal system people friendly, or what needs to be done to make it people friendly?
It's a difficult question, and I'll answer this question both as an attorney at law and also as an accused before the High Court. When I was arrested, I was very confident of few things. One was our judiciary. and then the judiciary has not let me down, and I'm grateful for the magistrates who heard my case, and it's some of those orders that they made really helped me a lot in my pursuit for justice. I had confidence in the legal system, in the sense the lawyers, and the fact that the courage and the will of the lawyers who go represent people and speak the truth fearlessly. That in my case certainly we saw a lot of that. I also had faith in certain government institutions that they have not lived up to expectations. So certainly two institutions, the Attorney General's Department and the Police Department. So if you're speaking of a level of lack of confidence and injustice and problems with our system, maybe reforms to these institutions might help deal or to improve that situation a little bit.
And thank you very much for your question. 0772 300 305. We are in conversation with Mr. Hejaaz Hizbullah, who has personal experience of being arrested under the PTA, and as an attorney he has his own views on what the alternative is, which is of course the anti-terrorism bill. Mr. Hizbullah, is there a long list of things that are wrong in this anti-terrorism bill?
Extremely long list. I will just flag out a few. It does not prevent arbitrary arrest or detention.
Right.
The offense of terrorism is extremely broad, which then makes a lot of all the associate offences such as aiding and abetting, being a member of a terrorist organization, all that extremely broad, and a large number of people and a large number of activities can drawn into it, right? So that's one of the biggest problems. Secondly, it paves the way for a police run, in the sense the police has full control, and not just police at a high level. Every ordinary police officer has a role to play in this and can initiate and take steps under the act, which has wide consequences for the ordinary citizen. So that earlier under the PTA that was not the case. There was some level of supervision, at least, although there was a lot of abuse. When I compare it with this, I feel the PTA was better because there's only a superintendent can issue an warrant.
And you're saying this as somebody who spent around 22
months. And also I see two very dangerous developments here. One is the introduction of confidential reports to the magistrate, which we've not had in our country. And now by law we have a practice of introducing confidential reports.
If this bill comes
into play. So there will be situations where the police will file reports which only the police and the magistrate will see, and obviously they can write anything. And the magistrate obviously is helpless because he has not heard, the other side has not seen the report.
But this is goes against the fundamental basics of legal representation.
Precisely.
Let the other side be heard.
Precisely. So that's something that we need to talk about and stand up against. And another thing is also the provisions of Section 61, where the superintendent of police has powers to restrict a large set of actions. All he has to do is he has to make an application to the magistrate and get the magistrate's prior approval. Again, things like, I'll just read some of those. Not to congregate at any particular location, Gota Gogama.
Right.
Not to hold a particular meeting, rally or procession. Now, who are they targeting? Which terrorist group is having rallies and processions that we need to have this in part of our law? So the question is, who are you targeting? Obviously, it's very obvious who is being targeted here, right? Not to enter any specified area or premises, not to leave a specified area or premises. This can have very severe consequences for citizens in their democratic and political activities. And also,
let's just put a hold on there. Let's go for a quick break and listen to this evening's headlines from the wonderful primetime news team. We'll see you on the other side of the break with Hejaaz Hizbullah.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Hejaaz Hizbullah.
Over 250 motor accidents in 6 days, leading to 25 fatalities. Difficult to hold local government polls on the 25th of April, says State Minister Vakkumbura. Opposition against the anti-terrorism bill continues. A new act to regulate media.
ඒක සමාජ ජාල මාධ්‍යයට සම්බන්ධයක් නැද්ද?
ඒක සියලු මාධ්‍යයන්ට අදාළ වෙන්නට ඉඩ තියෙනවා.
Anti-terrorism bill allows for phone calls and WhatsApp messages to be surveilled and produced as evidence in court, highlights attorney Hejaaz Hizbullah. Police opened fire at car that failed to stop in Polgahavela.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Hejaaz Hizbullah.
And welcome back to Newsline Live with Hejaaz Hizbullah. Mr. Hizbullah, before you get back to the anti-terror bill, can I ask you, because we are having questions coming in, and it's an interesting one. Did you, when you were arrested, were you told what the charges were? And B, did you have enough space to conduct your defense?
I was not told what the charges were.
Okay. So they took you in for the hell of it?
They came to my house and they want to know what my dealings with the Ibrahim family was. And they didn't say Ibrahim family, but Ibrahim, and then and I had dealings with the family as because I was their lawyer representing them in 2 civil litigations in respect of a piece of land that they had purchased, and there were issues with regard to that land. That was all. So this was the basis on which I was asked to come to the CID and to record a statement. So when I went there, and then they informed me, we'll record the statement tomorrow morning, you'll have to stay the night. That's what happened. I was not informed that I was arrested or that I was being arrested under the PTA or anything. We are going to record a statement and we're going to send you home tonight. Please come with us. I went to the station, went to the CID. Then they said, no, we can't. It's too late now. We can't record a statement. We'll record a statement the next day morning. And it went on for 22 months. But interestingly, whilst I was inside, it was only when I was inside that I was getting information from various sources saying that I was being framed for something very, very big, that they were trying to plant me and frame me for the Easter Sunday bombings. So that was, I mean, very scary. But I was then, this was never officially or in any way intimated to me saying that you're being arrested for being suspect for these offences. No.
And what about the space? We get enough space to conduct your defense?
In the sense that, well,
in the space and time, did you have enough, or did they question you so much?
They, of course,
that you didn't have time. You didn't have time to prepare for your defense.
No, well, I had an excellent legal team.
Right.
Excellent. I mean, an outstanding bunch of lawyers. And but I had problems even accessing my lawyers, and that's another problem with this ATA. They were not giving me permission to meet my lawyers, and even when lawyers came to meet me, those meetings were not confidential. They were not long enough, and they were monitored and they were being listened to. So I'll be meeting my lawyer. I'll be seated. My lawyer will be seated here, and there'll be 8 police officers, and this is no exaggeration, 8. And even when I meet my wife and we're talking to each other on Saturday, there'll be 8 police officers listening in on our conversation. And I think we had to go to the Court of Appeal and we had to get an order assuring confidentiality of our conversation, of legal, of my meetings being confidential. So
it would be fair to say that you fought for your space.
We fought for it. We fought for it.
And you didn't know, and it's amazing how they sort of invited you to come, and then they kept you, and let it slowly dawn on you.
Yes, I'll give you another interesting incident. So we are served lunch, and that's a rice packet that's given to us.
Yeah.
I was in a room. Next to it was the main cell on the 4th floor. Makandura Madush, who was killed, was also in the 4th floor.
It was a death in custody.
Death in custody, and he was in the main cell. So I had finished lunch, and I was given permission to go and wash my hand in the toilet. As I was walking, Madush was standing at the cell door, and he said, he used to call me Neetingja Mahatya. So he said, Neetingja Mahatya, there is some paper article about you. The paper that was used to wrap his lunch pack. So he just read it, and there was a reference to me. He said, there's something about you, please read it. And he gave me the piece of paper. And then I opened it out, and that was the island headline. Hejaaz Hizbullah is the Anton Balasingham of the National Tawhid Jamaat. So that really was shocking to me. Okay, so this is what I've been accused of.
Was that worrying?
It was worrying. It was worrying, and I was repeatedly told by the CID that your life is over. Don't think about going out there, being a lawyer, and doing anything. You finished.
At any one point, at any time in 22 months inside, did you think, this is it? I'm done. I'm cooked. I knew I was in for a lot. I knew that I was. It was a tough battle, but I had no choice. I had to fight this, and but I was innocent, and I knew I was innocent, and I had my faith in God and in the legal system, and that somebody somewhere will see that this is an utter lie, and no matter how much they frame and fabricate and cook up evidence, that somewhere things are going to fall apart and the truth is going to come out. So I had my faith in that. How long it will take, I had no estimation. I knew it was going to be a long time, and I was hopeful that it won't take as long as I thought it would have taken for other people. How did you prepare yourself?
One, I kept myself mentally occupied.
Right.
And that's something I'll advise anybody going through any type of being in. If you're fallen at the bottom of at any point in your life, keep yourself mentally and physically occupied, and also maintain a strong spiritual connection. I am grateful to that experience, although it may sound bizarre to say this, because it has really spiritually. I became very spiritual, and I started practicing as a Muslim. I started reciting the Quran more, all of that. So that I think I'm grateful to the CID and to the police for giving me that opportunity to worship for 22 months.
Absolutely amazing. This is, we are in conversation with Mr. Hejaaz Hizbullah, personal experience of the PTA, and now relating that PTA to the proposed anti-terrorism bill. What would you say, how can we reform the legal and penal systems of Sri Lanka? What would your suggestions be?
One thing that we can do is reduce laws delays. The amount of time it takes for a case to conclude. That is something that needs to be worked out. Secondly, we also need to spend a lot of time in training lawyers. I think legal education needs to be standards we need to work on some standards, so that every lawyer who comes out comes with a fair amount of competency and capability, so that the miscarriages of justice are minimized. Because sometimes I would say ineffective legal representation constitutes a significant amount of injustice and problems in the system. And if you have really good lawyers who are ready with their cases and who are ready to take matters on, and who are making the right applications and pushing things forward and keeping the police on its toes, certainly we are going to see a lot less police abuse happening. So those are, I think, two things that I think will go a long way.
You say you were fortunate to have a strong committed, fantastic legal team. If you weren't able to make that connection, if you were, economically challenged, can people out there, I think that's the question I'm asking you, is generally the people out there, can they afford a lawyer?
Well, certainly people won't be able to afford the lawyers that I was able to. The caliber and character of the lawyers who represented me, who are all doing it pro bono, because I was a member of the bar and they knew me personally, and certainly that they'll have a challenge. They'll have a real challenge putting together a team like that. That's something that really motivated me also to fight this hard, because if they could do this to me, how worse could it be for the ordinary citizen?
And I'd like to bring this, because you're a legal man and from the community. In the Muslim community, there's been a lot of conversations, controversies about the Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act. What are your thoughts on that? Is this necessary?
Yes, I think the Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act needs reform, and I think there is no debate about the fact that it needs reform. And as a lawyer and as a practicing lawyer, I've seen some of the problems. But what those precise reforms are is something I think the community needs to come to a consensus. But I think they have also done that too. I think the community has also come to some great understanding.
What about this? I'm asking this on behalf of the feminist brigade out there. Is it a good idea to have female qazis?
I think this has happened in other countries, and I think it's something that we should give it a try. But the problem here, Faraz, is not really the gender of the qazi.
No.
Maybe there is a problem with the gender also, but I think a far more serious issue is the qazis are not adequately trained, they're not adequately equipped, and they're not adequately monitored also. So if you go to see the qazis run a very small operation. It's not really like a court judicial process, and I think we need to address that, and that addressing that also will help the process go a long way, and having female qazis might be a good idea.
Thank you very much for being on Newsline Live. Hejaaz Hizbullah, tell me, are you now back on your feet? Are you practicing again?
Yes.
How's the return been?
Very good, very good. I'm enjoying being back in Halsdorf and going to court, and my experience being in the underbelly of the legal system as being a prisoner, a remand prisoner, and seeing what goes on, I think has helped me also to get some perspective about how we need to approach our vocation and our practice.
Did you ever regret, or did you ever think to yourself, thank God I became a lawyer, especially when you were being held by the CID?
Yes. Even if they didn't, I always say, thank God I became a lawyer.
And your family happy to see you again?
Yes, they are obviously.
What about your dad?
My dad, he went through a very hard time, and he, I think, was the one who struggled the most to deal in dealing with what happened to me. The CID allowed him to visit me, but he visited me only once, and then thereafter never came to visit me ever for the 22 months, because he could not deal seeing me in that situation.
Hejaaz Hizbullah, thank you very much for being on Newsline. You've been an absolutely marvellous guest. Thank you. And that's the way it was on Newsline Live. Take care, have a great evening, and as much as you can, of course, and God bless you all. It's time for the Primetime News.